Well, hello. I am doing part two of the Jewish parties in the New Testament times. The first one was the Pharisees. I did them alone because they are the biggest group, but part two is going to be the Sadducees and the Zealots. So, to break it down a little bit about them, the Sadducees were the aristocrats of the time. They were the party of the rich and the high priestly families. So you could say they were a little bit more of the uppity type of people. They were in charge of the temple and its services. They claimed to be descendants of Zadok, the high priest in the time of Solomon. However, the trueness to this and of their name is unknown, really. So can't really go too far off of that, but that is basically all we can really put to that. But they opposed the oral law, accepting the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, as the ultimate authority only. So then on to the Zealots. The Zealots receive only brief mention in the New Testament. Simon, one of the disciples, is called a zealot in Luke chapter 6, verse 15. I'm not going to speak too much about that because really what I wanted to break down more is to give you where you can find them in Bible and some other little timelines about them. So back to the Sadducees. They probably began about 200 BC. The demise occurred in about AD 700 with the destruction of the temple time. So the Sadducees, there was 3 possible translations. The righteous ones based on the Hebrew consonants for the word righteous. Ones is who sympathized with Zadok or the Zadokites based on their possible link to Zadok, the high priest, and syndicates or judges or fascial controllers based on the Greek word. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm going to give it a little shot. Sidikoi, I think is how you say it. But, I tried. But anyways, that is some of the names that they had given the Sadducees in this time. But their origin was an unknown origin, really. They claim to be the descendants of Zadok, like I said, the high priest under David, back in 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 17, and chapter 15, verse 24, and in the Song of Solomon, and Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 34 through 35, and 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 28. More of the origins of them, they had a possible link to Aaron, is what a lot of theologists have studied and found that they said that maybe there's a link to Aaron. Still, really kind of unknown. But where they probably formed into a group about 200 BC as high priest parties, because that's really about the biggest about of biblical evidence we have is that it was in 200 BC is when they really came about. So the segments of society that can be broken down with them is they were aristocrats. They were rich descendants of a highly priest line. However, not all priests were Sadducees. So you can't just think that they were the only priest out there. They were also, they say, possible descendants of the Hasmonean priesthood. Probably not as refined as their economic positions in life would suggest. Sometimes you can be construed with, you can hear that they were, rich and high priestly type of people, but their lifestyle may have not been as much as we really think or it leads on to. Their beliefs, though, was accepted only the Torah, like I said, the Pentateuch, Genesis through Deuteronomy, the law written by Moses as authoritative. They practiced literal interpretations of the law. They rigorously conservative towards the law. They stressed strict observance of the law. They oppressed past beliefs and traditions. They opposed oral law as binding, pretty much. They believed in absolute freedom of human will, that people could do as they wished without attention from God. It sounds wrong, don't it? You could see why they were the ones blaspheming Jesus. Denied divine providence. They denied the concept of life after death and the resurrection of the body, one of the biggest reasons why they didn't believe in Jesus. They denied the concept of the reward and punishment after death. They denied the existence of the angels and demons as materialistic. So, biblical references of where you can find them, I've already said a couple of them, is 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 17, and chapter 15, verse 24, 1 Kings chapter 1, verse 34, 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verses 26 through 28. You can find them in Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 45 through 46, 43, verse 19, chapter 44, verses 15 through 16. Then in Matthew chapter 3, verses 7 through 10, chapter 16, verse 1, and then again in verses 6 through 12, and chapter 22, verses 23 through 34, Mark chapter 12, verses 18 through 27, Luke chapter 20, verses 27 through 40, John chapter 11, verse 47, and Acts chapter 4, verses 1 through 2, and chapter 5, verses 17 through 18, and chapter 23, verses 6 through 10. So a little bit of the activities they did before we move on to Zealots, which are a lot more smaller things to talk about. They were in charge of the temple and its services. They were politically active. They exercised great political control through the Sanhedrin, of which many were members of. I do believe we had talked about that also with the Pharisees. But they supported the ruling power and the status quo. They leaned towards the spreading of Greek influence and were thus despised by the Jewish populace, you could say. Opposed both by the Pharisees and Jesus, because these lived by a larger Kanah. The Pharisees and Jesus both considered more than only Genesis through Deuteronomy as authoritative than the Sadducees did. They opposed Jesus specifically for the fear their wealth position would be threatened if they supported him, sadly. So then we get on to the Zealots. They are a lot smaller of a group, but their date of existence, there is a few date of existences for them that is possible. The three possibilities for their beginning is 1, during the reign of Herod the Great in about 37 BC, during the revolt against Rome in AD 6, or they also, a third one, trace back to the Hasdim or the Maccabees about 168 BC. Their certain demise occurred around AD 70 through 73 with Rome's conquering of Jerusalem. So that's when they came to an end. Some of the names they went by were referred to their religious zeal. There was terms referring into those involved in the Jewish revolt against Rome in AD 6, led by Judas of Galilee. Not really any names outside of zealots. I mean, they just believed in the religious zeal that looked upon them. Their origins, according to Josephus, the zealots began with Judas the Galilean, the son of Ezekias, who led the revolt in AD 6 because of a census done for the tax purposes. That's crazy. They were doing a census based on tax around this time. So there was a huge revolt. The segments of society, they were basically an extreme wing of the Pharisees. So wherever they were at, they were there. Their beliefs were similar to the Pharisees, with a few expectations. They believed strongly that only God had the right to rule over the Jews. Patriotism and religion became inseparable. They believed that total obedience supported by physical measures must be apparent before God would bring them into the Messianic age. Were frantically in their Jewish faith and in their devotion to the law to the point of they became martyrs, pretty much. You could find the Zealots not in a lot of places in the Bible, but you can find them in Matthew chapter 10, verse 4, Mark chapter 3, verse 18, Luke chapter 6, verse 15, Acts chapter 1, verse 13. Some of their activities were extremely opposed to the Roman rule over the Palestine, extremely opposed to the peace with Rome, refused to pay taxes. They demonstrated against the use of Greek language in Palestine. They engaged in terrorism against Rome and others with whom they disagreed politically with. And they could be basically assassins, were an extremist zealot group. They were called the Sicarii. They were basically assassins. They were an extremist zealot group who carried out acts of terrorism against Rome. So as much as they were religious people, they were also carrying out acts of terrorism. Crazy. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Part 3 will be the last part of it. I have a couple more to talk about. And God bless you guys. Like and subscribe. Share this stuff out. I'm posting whenever I preach. It's usually every other week, but the past one I had was 2 consecutive in a row. You got to be ready in and out of season. So still look for the sermons that come up from time to time. But with the Joshua Bible study and this that I'm doing, be looking for me to bring out another messianic prophecy that was revealed in the Bible here real soon. So God bless you guys.